to Quall's perspective. "Excuse me?" says Victor, sat cross-legged at the head of the class, with the mirthful tone of someone about to render a correction. "Think you'll find there's half a dozen species with higher populations than us." Responding just as mirthfully, my nephew, who is technically my ×18 great-granduncle, but who calls me aunt for the same reason all Requali males call their senior clan that, is both easier and more respectful, answers, "Most people tend to count those species either by queen or by the hive, which render slightly different figures from each other, but both of which would put their totals well below yours." "Seems like bullshit." His eyes flick out to the roomful of students, only just old enough to be allowed translators. "Seems like bull to me. Who decided to count them that way? Just 'cause they're small?" He holds his thumb and forefinger a centimetre or so apart. "Just 'cause workers and soldiers can't reproduce for themselves, don't seem fair." He folds his arms and gives a good-natured, suspicious look to my young relative. Thoughtfully, Takar turns his head to his class and asks, "Who can tell me why we count the Greentext, the Zafut, the Webconhor, the Clembleth, the Inslee, and the Hokronga that way?" Making it sound like someone choking on a fruit pit for the final species he names. Several moments of silence follow before one boy puts his talons in the air tentatively. "Kakor, please," says my nephew, indicating for the boy to go ahead. The boy, Kakor, nervously proffers, "Is it because those species are only sentient when they swarm?" "Very good, Kakor. And what is that property called?" asks Takar. Emergent intelligence, sir," responds the child, not intoning it as a question. "Top marks, yes." He turns to scratch the words "emergent intelligence" in Requali uniform on the board with his talons. "Those species have all achieved sapient-level intelligence in a thoroughly different way to most species, developing the job of thinking out to hundreds of thousands of very small, not particularly powerful brains who, when gathered in a eusocial fashion, are able to communicate to problem solve like no individual ever would be. Single members of those species are well below the thresholds of sapience and sentience, but, in aggregate, they possess both as emergent properties. Oh, and if any of you ever find yourself talking to a hive of any of those species, with the exception of the Khmer, try to avoid staring at their queens. The queens are not actually in charge of the colony, but are, by far, the most vital members of it, so seeming fixated on them will appear rude and aggressive, as a rule." At this point, a loud shriek plays over the PA, and Victor jumps into a crouched stance, drawing every eye, his face looking mildly alarmed. "It's just the end of school announcement, Victor," I chitter, mirthfully, causing him to relax in relief. "How do Terran schools signify the end of day?" asks Takar curiously. Seeming a little out of breath from his adrenaline come-down, Victor chuckles. "Some of them use bells. Mine, the teacher would see the time and go, 'Okay, home time.'" "Fascinating," says Takar genuinely. The boys file out and my nephew resets the board to remove the lines he gouged in it over the course of the lesson. The three of us now alone in his class, he turns to Victor and I and asks, "So, why are you two back in Requal?" "On our way to a big mission, picking folks up along the way. Can't really say much more than that," smiles Victor. "Really? Is it a secret?" asks Takar, leaning in, intrigued. "It's confidential, yes," I confirm. "How exciting," he answers. "Well, in that case, I shan't ask you any more about it. Are you two free now? I know a lovely little restaurant in the city we could go to together and catch with each other, if you're not busy." Victor laughs. "Appreciate the effort, Taki, but it's phrasal. Catch up with each other." "All right. Do you want to catch up with each other?" he says, unperturbed. Victor looks to me. Reckon we got time before your thing? I think for a moment before answering, we should have, yes. Excellent, proclaims my nephew. Let's go. The three of us step from the class onto the railless walkway, suspended several hundred meters in the air, on the side of the enormous school tree. Without looking back, Takar launches himself on the edge and begins flying in the direction of Rawakwal city centre. Victor looks mirthfully after him and asks, "How long do you reckon it'll take him to remember I can't fly?" I look after my oblivious nephew and answer, "I think it will take him at least 500 meters. "Oh, he's a bright boy. Let's give him a bit more credit than that. Let's say 499 meters, he responds, grinning, giving a figure which is translated to far more specificity than the one I gave, and I infer to have been a single digit below the rounded up number he heard. After around 500 meters, Takar looks around and, seeing himself not being accompanied, performs half a turning circle in air, to point himself back at us. He returns and lands on the walkway, laughing. "I'm so sorry. It completely slipped my mind that humans can't fly." "No bother," smiles Victor. "I'll take it as a compliment." How do you intend us to travel?" he asks, apprehensively looking back at the distance between us and even the outer edge of the city. Victor laughs. "We got a shuttle at the bottom of the tree, Tacky. I ain't thinking of making you trudge across miles of savannah and scale a 100-meter cliff on foot with me. You'd probably get stepped on by a wild Quarat." "Oh, that's a relief," responds Takar, before frowning. "Still quite a long way to go without flying, though." In answer, Victor stoops to put his shoulder less than a meter from the ground. I don't hesitate to extend my bionic and climb up to the high stamina mobile platform. After a moment's hesitation, Takar joins me. Victor stands and begins walking down the left side of the walkway, avoiding the edge on the right. "I get that they'd be more of a liability to you guys, but I wish Raquel had more safety railings. Feels like a stiff breeze would push me off," comments Victor warily. "The day a breeze strong enough to move a Terran somewhere they do not wish to go blows on Raquel is a day that hundreds of Raquali would die. You forget this isn't a death world, Victor," I observe, warily. "Besides, you have your longfall, don't you?" He chuckles, gestures to the device and says, "So that's how it feels to be on the other side of that. Yeah, longfall would mean I wouldn't get hurt if I fell, but I still wouldn't like it." "I thought Terrans engaged in thrill-seeking behavior. Wouldn't falling hundreds of meters, trusting only to the integrity of a momentum arresting field, be well in line with that?" asks Takar. "Some do. I generally prefer to minimize risk. Ironic given my line of work. Or maybe it isn't, actually. Now that I think about it, thrill-seeking would be a pretty piss-poor quality to have as a health and safety officer." We find our way to the Swiftclaw and step aboard. "Hello, Victor. Hello, Captain. Who's your friend?" comes Twiller's voice once we're inside. Takar looks around for the speaker a few moments, before she mercifully adds, "I'm an AI, sweetheart. There's no one here for you to see." "Oh," he responds, "my name's Takar. It's nice to meet you," before adding, "Congratulations on your kind's recent recognition," politely. "Thank you, sweetie. My name's Twiller. Where do you guys want to go?" Victor and I look to Takar, who asks, "Would you be able to find a restaurant called Wakarakri?" uncertainly. "I found it while you were asking. Taking you there now, though the streets are quite close, so you'll have to walk the last few hundred meters," answers Twiller cheerfully. The three of us look down on the savannah below as we fly. It's dotted with patches of trees, and here and there are herds of giant Quarat birds, presumably munching on grass. Quarkwee's perspective. "I finish my shift and record that fact in my holo, which will then communicate it to the software that tracks my hours. I grab the pouch containing my personal effects and head out the back door. I round the front of the building and run into an absolutely stunning male. An unfamiliar woman, looks like a clan member, with 2 missing eyes and a missing leg, and a frighteningly large Terran. "Quackwe, what a pleasant surprise," beams the only member of the group I recognize. "Are you coming or going?" "Oh, hello, Takar," I say uncertainly to the beautiful male, who I should not be thinking about the way I do before saying, "It's, nice to see you. I was just on my way home. Who are you with?" Stupidly. "This is my aunt, Daqual," he says. I try not to give away my relief that this woman, who looks much more exciting and like she wouldn't be courting anywhere near as far above her station as me, isn't a suitress. Probably, depending on exactly how distant a relative she actually is. "And this is my friend Victor," he adds, gesturing to the ox of a Terran. "You're friends with a Terran?" I ask, surprised. The pale-skinned, featherless biped bears his oral bone outcrops, petrifyingly, and says, "Yeah, Taki and I go way back. Decent bloke." How did you encounter each other?" I say, trying not to sound quite so clanless. The big man shrugs and says, "Kicked in a door, took out a bunch of kidnappers, opened a cell, gave him an apple, lifelong friend," with a demeanor that suggests no joke or exaggeration. "He saved my life and has my eternal gratitude. I shall duel any who impugn this man's honor," declares the object of my inappropriate affection. I giggle at the image of a male fighting a duel, but quickly stop myself, afraid of offending. "All right. Well, it was lovely running into you," I say, turning to go. "Wait," calls the beautiful male after me. I turn back to see what he wants to add. "Are you free now? Would you like to join us for a meal?"
Later.
I should not be here. The looks my co-workers gave me when I came in, minutes after clocking out, in the company of a cyborg, a clan chief's son, and a Terran were disbelieving. This is too fancy a restaurant for me to eat at. I only work here. The Terran is sat on a chair, reinforced to take his weight, that he had to fetch from the back himself, because moving it was too difficult for any of my co-workers. The cyborg woman, Daqual, is on a single perch, next to him and opposite me. Takar is sharing a perch with me. The Terran is animatedly telling a story, having finished the mountain of fruit he ordered. She just, raised up her fist and cracked the table in half. Big, solid thing, built for Terrans. Went well for the next half hour or so, until law enforcement came and tranked her. Not her fault at all. They cocked up her doses, so she was walking around thinking she was okay when she weren't. "Oh, hey." He flags down a co-worker of mine and asks, "You wouldn't happen to have a loo here, would you?" With unflappable professionalism, Gokart answers, "That way and to your left, sir," with a courteous dip of his head, managing to completely avoid showing any signs of fear at having the Terran so close. "And would it happen to be, shall we say, equipped for Terrans?" asks the Terran apologetically. Garkat dips his head again and answers, "That shouldn't be an issue, sir. It's all up to date and very good at identifying necessary thoroughness of sterilization. In a neutral pseudo-clan dialect of Akali, refined enough not to sound coarse, not so refined as to sound like he's putting on airs." "Great," pronounces the Terran, baring his teeth. "I shall be availing myself of the little boyish room before we get going, then." "Oh, now that you mention it, I think I shall too," says my perch mate cheerfully. "Have fun," quips the woman opposite me. The two men go, leaving me alone with the adventurous-looking woman. A few minutes pass before she coolly observes, "So, you have feelings for Takar?" My heart stops and I furiously calculate what to do next. Should I try and lie? Deny it? She didn't even frame it as a question. Is there any point denying? Yes, I answer finally, defeated. Please don't tell him. The cyborg woman, who I now realize is as terrifying as the Terran who works for her, Kashi says, I won't, but you should. As she takes a beakful of her drink and tips her head back to swallow it. Why? I ask incredulously. So I can get a reputation as a conniver? Trying to marry her way up the social ladder? So my co-workers can laugh at me for thinking I had a shot with him? So my boss can fire me because I've proven that I'm unfit to work with my restaurant's caliber of clientele? So that he can say yes, dear girl, chisses the woman. Why would he? I ask, turning the palm of my left talon to the ceiling. What's someone like me got to offer a man like him? I'm nobody. She raises her shoulders in what my translator tells me is a Terran mannerism of nonchalance, and shatters my world with 5 words. He definitely likes you back. I stare at her, dumbstruck. Eventually, I manage, You think so? I know so, dear girl. I'd wager Victor's having a very similar conversation with him right now, though he may be waiting until they're out of the bathroom. Terrans tend not to like to talk while relieving themselves, she says, mirthfully, before continuing. You may not get the chance. Dakar may take the decision of whether to address your clear attention for each other out of your hands. Why not get ahead of that scenario? I mull that over for a while before asking, All right, but I'm still a restaurant worker, you realize. You think if he brings me home to his mother and says, Hello, mother, this is Kwokwi. She's a restaurant worker and my future life mate. That I get to walk out of that palace with my head attached? She chitters. My great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmother has been rearing chicks since Terrans were fighting from chariots and has values to match. I'm sure she'll be mortified, but I'm also certain you won't be the worst affront to the status of one of her kin that she's ever suffered. Fairly certain she's almost brought Require to civil war a few times over matches she disapproved. By the 17, was that meant to make me feel better? I ask, not carrying out a turn on speaking to the high spire woman. It was, but I can see that it didn't. What I mean is, don't worry about it. She won't care anywhere near as much about your social standing as she did about all those times rival clans tried to make power plays with marriage. Glad to know I'm not worth starting a civil war over, I retort. Listen, it will be hard, but she can't execute you and she can't override her son's wishes. That said, might I suggest not picking out the throne room of Castle High Spire for your first date? I burst into chittering laughs. Good to see you guys are getting along, comes the voice of the Terran, approaching from the bathroom and flanked by a dazed-looking Takar. Looks like his aunt was right on the money. All right, Victor. We have an appointment to keep, says the incomparable woman. The two of them pay their respective portions of the bill and bid us farewell. Me and Dakar sit in silence for a long while, avoiding eye contact. Eventually, I decide to just go for it, but... Kwokwi, there's something I want to tell you, says the beautiful man before I can. Oh, 17. It's happening!